A friend of mine said something very enlightened while we were talking at a bookstore in Minneapolis today. They effectively said that there's not really any point anymore in advocating for or against violent resistance to violent oppression. If you violently oppress a large enough group of people hard enough, sooner or later, some of that group of people will choose to violently fight back. So I might have my opinion on how best to handle things. You might have your opinion on how best to handle things. Our general community might have one opinion, and the government might have one opinion. But none of those opinions are going to dictate what actually happens. The only thing that can dictate any of these events are whether or not the violent oppression hits enough people hard enough that they reach that breaking point. That is the only thing that can control whether or not resistance gets violent sooner or later. Because it doesn't actually matter what you think right here, right now, before that breaking point happens. When something shocking to the conscience happens to a human being, then we decide what that choice is going to be. It was not violent resistance that we saw after Renee Good and Alex Preddy's death in Minneapolis. However, it was a larger scale resistance and a more direct resistance that is being seen in the Twin Cities after those deaths than anyone really could have possibly expected given this country's track record. As I've been talking with people here, they have been mentioning that they are in their neighborhood or block's Signal group chat or Discord channel or what have you. And they described a sudden influx of people who were talking about how they never really expected themselves to be the type of person to get involved. But after witnessing that violence from the state, they felt like they had to. They felt like there was no other choice. They needed to engage because it actually did not matter who they were before. After their conscience saw something so shocking that they could not ignore it, they became someone else and they activated in a way that they never thought they could. That is what's going to happen to large sections of every single one of our communities if the government does not cease their attacks on civilians. If the violence keeps happening and it becomes more frequent, it becomes more consistent, and it becomes worse, we are going to have people break that way. We are going to have people resist in whatever tactic they emotionally feel is best. Or, in all honesty, they don't even need to think it's the best option. They might just do it. Because human beings, as much as we like to pretend otherwise, are not rational animals. There does not need to be reason to fight back against someone who is hurting you. Sometimes you just fight back against someone hurting you. It doesn't even matter if the majority of people's response is to flee, freeze, or fawn. The fact is, instinctually, some people will fight. It will be forced out of them so long as the government is creating those situations, is creating that fight or flight response in people. Because the government is the aggressor here, and only the aggressor can stop or stall a conflict. It is not in the people's power to keep civil conflict from happening if the aggressor continues to aggress. The deciding factor of whether or not we see civil war is not whether or not the people choose to fight back. That choice will be made for us by the government choosing to continue to attack or by relenting. And if they do not relent, every single thing that happens after that is their fault. Full stop. There's no other interpretation of this. So if you are sitting there constantly worried about what your neighbor is going to do, what your community is going to do, understand that your community is going to do what the government forces them to do. So, if you want to avoid that type of large scale violence, demand the government avoid it because they are the only ones you can make that demand of.